Welcome to Trauma and Transcendence, where healing meets awakening. I'm Amanda M. Dodd, your guide on this transformative journey. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Let's transcend together. Oh, hello, soulful seekers. Welcome back to Trauma and Transcendence. As always, I am your host, Amanda M. Dodd. I have the most incredible guest for you today. You are going to love him. To know him is to love him. He's got the biggest heart, and I know he's going to win you over the way that he has me. But first, let's talk about what's going on. Tonight, as you are hearing this, I will, of course, be in the Salt Cave, and we are doing something a little bit new and a little bit fun. I'll be guiding the group in the Salt Cave to work on their manifesting and their abundance. So, clearing whatever blocks that you have. If you've felt like there has been a bit of a cast or a shadow over you, we're going to bust through those. It's a great meditation, 90 minutes. You're going to love it. That's where I will be. So if you're not there and you're hearing this, I'm sorry you've missed it. The next week is going to be inner child healing. This work. I love this work. I have had grown men cry in the Salt Cave on these journeys. And as Nick, as you know, it's because we don't give our men enough time to show up and feel their feelings. And so sometimes I have these men that are plus 60 years old and they're doing this work for the first time and it hits them. But when we do this work, beautiful things happen and wholeness that you didn't know could exist arrives. And that is such a gift. But without further ado, my favorite guest so far, Dr. Nic Natale. Welcome, Nick.
Thank you so very much, Amanda. This is amazing. Thank you for the opportunity for allowing me just to come in and join with you all. And what a wonderful opportunities that people have just to kind of be and actually look at some things that's going on deeply in their lives. And I 100% agree. We don't give space for men to actually feel. Sometimes we can even take a step further and make the assumption that men don't feel like perhaps the feminine does feel. And that just isn't true. Remember, we're masculine and feminine, each one of us, and a blend and even a balanced is what we're looking for. So what a wonderful opportunity you're giving to individuals.
Thank you. And I completely agree. That was one of the first things we spoke about, wasn't it? I caught your class in Vegas. And then we became fast friends after then because we agreed about a lot of things. And it's the way we treat men within society. Further, that cemented that. I took one of Freya Norn's classes. And we talked a lot about men who are trying to have more control over their bodies and how everything works in their sexuality, how women can actually be really toxic. And it just crushed me. It's like, oh man, why do we keep doing this? So it's interesting that here we are again, and we're still talking about this same vein because it's so worthy. It so needs to.
It most certainly is. It's one of the things we actually do not talk about enough. And we operate off of assumptions, old data. We will operate off of the script that is embedded within us based on family, past, trauma, experiences, good and bad. And those things come together and kind of form how we bring ourselves. And I mean, holistically, our minds, our emotions, our spirit, and our body to the experience. And sometimes we can bring things that are no longer serving us. And so those cleansing type of experiences that you're offering your people, oh, that is beautiful. That is beautiful. What a wonderful work. Yes.
It is. It's deeply fulfilling, as you know, because you do the same work. Talk to me about the journey of Nick. What has this been like? Where did you start and how did you end up serving the people that you serve now?
Well, my life is a funny story. You know, when I was a kid, I just knew I was always attuned to the spiritual. Now, I grew up in South Carolina in the United States, and we just had a lot of woodlands behind us. And so I literally grew up running through the pines, running through the trees, climbing them, and coming in touch And I knew even as a young age, running through there by myself, that there was more than just what I could see and hear and smell and taste. That there's an energy there. And I found pockets of things. Now that spiritual interest, it was definitely taken and guided toward a more traditional conforming type of expression in religion. And I actually followed that for a long while. And I even became a Southern Baptist minister,
How
part of
does
my
that happen?
career.
How does that happen? How do you go from something that I understand really well, being a medium through childhood and having those extra sensory perception experiences? How do you go from that into Baptist?
Do you understand Southern culture at all?
Oh, I'm Canadian, so that's
I
that might be the problem.
Yes, when people think about spiritual, especially when I was a child, that
Mm,
meant religion, and this is what you do: you go to church. And now, do not get me wrong. I had a wonderful, fulfilling time
yeah.
serving people. I served people all over the world in the name of Christ, and really loved it. And I enjoyed it and met some wonderful people. It gave me an opportunity to be in difficult places at difficult times. All the while, I was also pursuing degrees in psychotherapy, working with the heart, working with the mind, working with emotions, working with relationships. And even today, I am a licensed professional counselor in the state of South Carolina, as well as a certified sex therapist through ASET. And I provide therapy as well as consulting. Most people refer to it as coaching. But I do consulting with individuals and couples from around the world, specifically around how to enhance the spiritual and intimate connection between them. And so, how do they can become more confident lovers is often what I would say. So, I start.
That right there, there's a tough gap for people to go from spiritual, religious to um, expressing sexuality and being authentic and comfortable with it. What navigated your path through that? That's fascinating to me.
Well, there was always something, even when I was part of this very formative religious expression that was quite conservative, and you're right, quite repressive when it comes to body expression and orientations and all these type of things. But there was an echo. Amanda, you know this. There
Mm,
was an echo of what I felt running through the woods. There was
yeah.
an echo of a broader spiritual things. And as Shakespeare said, and I have embraced, there's more things taking place, Horatio, than just what our philosophies can contain. And it has allowed me to embrace a more mysticism type of
Mm,
spirituality. And that was just a catalyst to be able to have my own eyes open,
yeah.
to be able to see that this is about love. And one of the ways that we and I do help people in this conservative South is helping them to see that this is not a contradiction even to their religion. Matter of
Yeah.
fact, I deeply believe that we are meant and created to be able to share ourselves in a consensual, loving, connecting, spiritual way.
Mhm.
And that is my message. That is my message. Sometimes we have to work through a lot of different things, like, what those scripts are saying to us, what perhaps was the message about sex and intimacy, sensuality in the bedroom
Mhm.
as, they were growing up. All those messages are embedded deep. Sometimes we have to shed them. And so I've had to do a lot of shedding myself over the years, and it's just been a wonderful experience. I had someone reached out who knew my former life, and it says, "Nick, are you okay?" And I said, "My friend, please, I
Never
am
better.
better than I've ever been. I don't think you understand." And as plenty of other gurus and spiritualists and other persons in the mysticism understand, you can't explain it. You're there or you're not. it's hard to argue it. You can't argue about it. And so, and I've gone through those type of things. But who I am today and what I do today to help people, I've never felt more alive.
Oh. So, for people listening, how would they know if they've got one of those scripts happening, one of those scripts you talked about where they're feeling stuck, or what other feelings they may have? How do we identify, ooh, I'm living in a script?
One of the first things that we can do is, well, how do our body respond to touch?
Mm,
So we're just talking about casual. Let's just talk about this. You're with your partner, you're with your life mate, you're with the person that you love, your significant other, your spouse, and they just come up and touch. Is it a brace?
mhm,
I'm not talking about being startled. That's different.
mhm,
I'm talking about, what does your body say first about touch? And
mm,
oftentimes that begins the corridor opening that we need to explore. And I
mhm,
do it a little bit differently if I'm doing it as a consultant versus as therapy, because those are two different procedures. But we do explore, where does this come from? And how do we actually release that? And how do we, make sure that doesn't define everything that is about to wonderfully happen or could happen in our midst over the next few moments?
mm,
But Amanda, that's a wonderful question. And the first is this: how does your body respond to touch? Is
mm.
a key indicator.
Yeah, yeah. I can definitely think of things through time and space where that was not easy, especially after that first marriage. And I
Mm,
didn't have a whole lot of time for healing in between. So really it was out of the stove and into the oven. And there were things that my body was holding on to, even though I felt I'd been past it in my heart. So
mm.
it's interesting how that plays out.
It really is
When,
interesting. It's a beautiful
yeah.
thing, because it's as we are working oftentimes in the realm of hypnosis with the other unseen part of ourselves, that unseen part has more influence than what we want to think that it does.
Yeah.
And we oftentimes can also address those things without having to, as some people believe, go back and repair every single thing that's ever happened to
Mhm.
me and be at complete peace. Actually, we can do a
Mm.
lot of repair without all that. But that's for
I'm
another
so I'm
conversation.
so glad you've talked about that, the repair that we can do, because I've had clients in the past come around, and so I work with people in terms of trauma and self-development, a little bit different in that I'm really focusing on the person. I don't really work with couples very often at all. And I will have them when they're just coming out of a relationship that they need to be leaving. And
Mm,
then there's this hesitancy to get back into relation, even if it's been years after. And it's like, well, you can do a lot of healing on your own, but we're relational creatures. I personally did all my healing in relationship because that's when those triggers were coming up. And I could be like, ooh, there's something
mm,
to learn here. And I wouldn't have had that opportunity had I not been in a relationship. So I like that you mentioned that, because I feel like for some of us, there's a shame after of, oh, there's this failure feeling of this thing didn't go well.
mhm.
I don't know if it's me, I don't know if it's them, but I don't know if I want to do it again either. Can you speak to that a little bit?
Well, I'm going to speak to this, and it's a very interesting thing, and it's sometimes can be quite controversial. So even
Mhm.
if you want to cut everything out, or even end this thing right now, I completely understand, because what I'm going to say is can sometimes resonate pretty difficult. Uh, I do not believe that all of our relationships are meant to last forever.
Mm. That's refreshing. I didn't even consider that. So there you go, ladies and gents. Nick has a very different perspective to look at. And I have
Yeah,
heard people talk about that. The people who are here for a reason, a season.
there you go.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
we put so much pressure on ourselves to make everything eternal.
and one of the reasons why we do put
Yeah.
pressure on ourselves and our partner is because we want all of our needs to be met by them. Virginia Sestar. She's a humanist who wrote in the 1960s and 70s. And she identifies 7 basic needs that every single one of us has. And the first one is to be heard and understood. And she goes through all these, and they're just wonderful. They're just beautiful things. I use them on a daily basis. But one of her quintessential points is we will put pressure on our significant other to meet all those needs, and they can't.
Yeah.
They can't always listen to the extent that you want them to. They can't always accept you unconditionally. They can't always accept just who you are. And so we have to have a variety of people. Now, I'm not talking about just alternative kind of long-term situationships. I'm talking about a variety of people in our lives, but we will put expectations that are unrealistic. And that becomes pressure, and that becomes tension. And that tension is going to create ripples that are not healthy in the relationship itself.
And then how many times are we looking for something from someone else? And what we really want is to receive that from ourselves. I can think of times when I didn't feel heard and I thought I wanted it from my spouse. It was me who needed to hear me, and I wasn't doing that. And so that wasn't working well until I realized, oh, it's me who I want to hear me and accept me.
That is beautiful, and that is true, Amanda, because we will try to get these things, especially those of us who focus on the external, those of us around us. We put so much emphasis on that, we actually don't know ourselves very well.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's one thing I try to tell my clients often. We can only give what we have for ourselves, and we can only receive what we are willing to give ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The same way that I express that is very similarly, we cannot take someone any further we have been ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, as coaches, for sure, that's 100%, but then beyond. So how does someone know when it's time to give Dr. Nic a call?
Oh, wow. That is an excellent question.
Yeah.
Oftentimes when people are coming to see me, they are at a point where a serious discovery has been made, or they have tried everything else. They've gone to Google, they read the book, they talked to their doctor, or they've received an ultimatum from their spouse. So there's usually either there's a catalyst that's there, something like an ultimatum, or there's been something happening in their life, like a discovery. And that's one of the reasons why persons will come to see me. But the other one is they have tried everything else to address this issue. They have exhausted every other path. And now they're coming to see the sex therapist. Now they're coming to see the consultant who's talking about the fact that pleasure can actually be healing.
Yeah.
Now that we're talking about, from an existential perspective, spiritual things that are just beyond simple church attendance. We're going to be doing the fragmented work internally. A lot of my approach is based on what we call existentialism, just who we are. I think, therefore I am. So when a person is at one of those 2 points, there's a catalyst, like an ultimatum or discovery or something like that, or they're just plain exhausted and they've tried everything else. And now they're coming in and they want to try either something hypnotic, but hypnosis is not what I do with every single person. It's part of the work that I do with certain individuals. I think it's going to be most effective. But it's either out of a catalyst or exhaustion.
Yeah.
Does that make sense?
I've seen a lot of people, I've heard of a lot of people having that exhaustion. When I think about that exhaustion, that was the thing that was like, been in this marriage for 7 years. It's me or him. That was literally what went through my mind. Okay, I can continue doing this and be the person that he wants me to be. He's never going to be satisfied. Or I can choose me. I did the hard thing and I chose me. And I realize now that I actually broke out of a bigger cycle, and my current significant other as well. And I reminded him just the other day, we both broke really big cycles. And there are people who are stuck in that their whole lives.
Their whole lives.
And I've got clients that come and they're in their 60s. They've been married for 30, 40 years, and they're now realizing their significant other is a narcissist, and they have lost themselves and they don't know how to proceed. Yeah.
I sometimes will talk to a man who has said, I have, you know, sacrificed so much and I never asked for what I needed. That was never part of the equation. And now I am in my 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s and saying, what do I do with, how do I live my life best?
Yeah.
Now, Amanda, you and I both share a similar story in
Mm,
that I was once married, and
mm,
as a relationship therapist, I made the hard decision to transition from that relationship, that marriage. And it was a devastating time of my life.
yeah.
And, but it was one that needed to be done.
And
And
so, was it that catalyst, or was it the exhaustion, or some combination of both?
some combination of both. But,
Yeah.
perhaps we even share the fact that we're the ones who had to make the move, right?
Yeah.
We're the ones who had to say, and for both of us, one of the most amazing things is there's someone else out there.
Oh, yeah.
And I am the happiest I have been my entire journey. And this has been a remarkable thing.
Risk for great reward, right?
Mm,
I
yeah.
took one hell of a risk, and I was just lucky it really paid off. And I did something that I ordinarily wouldn't do, and I put all my cards on the table, and I flat out let him know, hey, this is my current situation. If this isn't going to work for you, no hard feelings, say so now. And he more or less did the same. And then when we did come together, we're like, oh, there are some discrepancies here. And it
Mm,
wasn't intentional. It was, oh, I wasn't aware of these things. So I didn't know I was bringing this to, but we really did try to put all our cards on the table, each of us. And I think that made a big difference.
yeah.
Have the hard, scary conversations. Yeah.
Hard, scary conversations. Yeah.
Take me on a journey, Nick. Where are we going next?
All right. There's one thing I would love to be able to focus on because at some point in my work with individuals and couples, I am a pleasure based type of therapist and consultant. And so, sensuality, sex, intimacy, that is the ground that I walk on and work through every single day. If I'm seeing 3 people or 5 people, these things are going to have these pieces are going to have a part of our conversation. And always, well, no, I don't want to say always, but most of the time, the person I'm seeing is looking for some form of healing.
Mm-hmm.
And what I usually like to make sure we always emphasize is we can allow the pleasure in our lives to be healing. So, intimacy, sensuality, and even sex can be healing for the individual and for the couple. So, we're working against something here, and perhaps this is not everywhere, but in my flow of life in the American South, there is this prevailing thought, and I think I've seen it everywhere else. When I was living on the West Coast, lived out in Washington State, I saw it out there as well. There is this working idea that I have to get all my life straight first, and then I'm going to be able to enjoy sex.
Mm. Yeah, I
Once
can see a
we,
couple of big flaws with that,
yeah,
especially as we age. Things don't always work the way we want them to. The body changes. Yeah.
well, even tension in a relationship, you know, we're going to put this on hold until we get this good understanding about what we're going to do with
Mhm.
whatever is going on. And what we do, we leave on the table something that is amazing, that is actually not only fulfilling for the individual, but connecting to the couple, and we don't allow that to happen.
Yeah.
So I'm just sending a message out there and saying in so many different ways, pleasure heals.
Mhm.
Now, when you and I see each other face to face, we'll be in Vegas. We'll go to HypnoThoughts Live, and I'm actually hosting a conversation on this very topic. How do we unleash our inner passion so that it can be healing for us, so that
Yeah.
the pleasure can be healing? Now, that's within ourselves first and within the couple as well. What I mean by that is, Amanda, oftentimes I'm talking with someone in the first session, or maybe just a call or just a consultation is taking place. And I'm listening, and what I'm really listening for is, say we have an individual who says, I really want to improve my libido, or I want to improve my
Mhm.
desire for sex, or something of that nature. And I'm listening to them, and then what I'm trying to discern is, are you doing this for yourself, or are you doing this for someone else?
Yeah.
And if I get enough of the red flags that perhaps they're even here in my office because someone else says, hey, you got a problem, then we have to have a next level conversation.
Mhm.
Because, Amanda, I'm not interested in just helping a person be able to please another person. It begins here
Yeah.
in your
But
own self.
but you bring that insight right within the consult?
Yeah, the first 15, 30 minutes. If I
Oh
get
my
enough of
god.
those flies, I'm like, we got a time out here. I
Yeah.
need you to know I'm not here to to make sure that he is satisfied. I am not here to make sure that you guys
Yeah.
are going to somehow increase your libido so that you can have more sex, and
Mhm.
realizing you don't even want that. We're
Right.
going to start from the process of, all right, is this something you want?
Mhm.
And what do you want? Because those slight little details is where all the magic really happens.
I can't agree more, and I just wanna appreciate that you are one of those therapists who isn't going to keep their clients hanging. You're quick to let them know, "Hey, this is a potential red flag or issue here. Were you even aware of this?" Because I know some people hold that off, and then their clients eventually get tired, they give up, they look for someone who's gonna be a straight shooter and give them answers. So I honor you for that
Yeah.
because that's powerful. Oh my goodness.
Oh my goodness! If anyone is with someone in the coaching arena, the counseling arena, the therapy arena, and they're hearing a message, something like, we can fix you for another, fix you
Mhm.
for your spouse, I'm gonna fix you for, uh, we're already off, and that is a red flag for the whole process. No, so we're going to begin with what's going on within even
Mhm.
this individual, because there's maybe a reason why it's the case that you know maybe the body really does know,
Yeah.
and you're trying to force something. Because we will say, as in our work, where the mind goes, the body is going to follow. And so we're going to hear that an awful lot, because something gets in your head and your body's going to respond in a way that's appropriate to that. And but that is actually the body being true to itself. Perhaps there's a deeper reason why your body is shutting down.
Yeah.
We have to talk about that. But
Right, that could be a whole other Vegas talk right there.
yeah, it really could be. Let's talk about that, because the body is
Yeah,
protecting itself, right? The
yeah.
body and the soul is protecting itself. It's making sure that it's not enduring harm, more harm.
Right.
I had this crusade about ending any form of obligation sets. I'm just like, that is the
Yeah,
enemy. I do not like any form of that. If there's consequences, if I don't, or anything that seems obligatory,
yeah.
we're just like, nah, we got to cut that off.
I mean, what do you expect to get out of something like that? That's I can see where like resentment would be created. There would be a sense of obligation, of duty, and then you're not going to have that authentic connection. So I love that you're going there with that. That makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's a myth out there that we have to get everything right in our relationship or even my entire life before we can experience good intimacy. And that is just not the case. Pleasure can be a healing factor for you. Let me give you a couple examples, and these things are kind of extreme, but they actually happen within the context of my work, and it's just remarkable to see. So I'm working with a woman in her 30s, and she really began to recognize that some OCD type of features were revealing themselves when, for example, she's driving or something of that nature.
Okay.
She can sometimes get in her head. Now, she is a sensualist. She's a self-admitting sensualist. She loves her body.
Break that down for me.
A sensualist, a
Yes.
sensualist is someone who's just really in tune to their body. They enjoy the touch. They enjoy their own orgasmic experience.
Okay.
They want to experience sensuality between her and her partner.
Mm-hmm.
And she was trying to get a really hold of some of these encroaching OCD type of intrusive thoughts when she's driving.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, is there a way that you can use your sensuality to maybe set up within yourself a reward structure around the idea of driving? Because what she usually would do is, and this is a common experience for an OCD feature, she would drive through a section of town,
Mm-hmm.
hit a pothole or hit a bump, and then she gets in her mind, did I do something? Did I hit someone?
Mm-hmm.
And what she ends up doing is circling back around.
Yeah.
And a 15-minute trip home turns into an hour trip home because she actually went there again and sat through
Wow.
traffic just to check, right? So we ask her, and this is just driven by her, as most of my things are, hey, what would you set up for yourself? So what she set up for herself, like she was able to differentiate the difference between the mind and the brain. And that's an important step when doing OCD work, because the brain is going to scream things and the mind knows what's real and what's not. So the brain is screaming, hey, this could have happened. Hey, this could have happened. You need to go check. You need to go check. Her mind is saying, I'm fine. I checked the rearview mirror. It was a pothole. I even saw it coming. So I said, well, can you set up a reward structure for listening to your mind and setting aside your brain? She says, I can. I want you to tag that to something sensual for yourself. She said, okay. Give me an idea. What do you want to do with that? She says, when I get home, if I haven't circled around, that means I listen to myself and not just my brain, my organ, the organ, just screaming these things. I'm going to give myself an orgasm.
Yeah. I like that. The organ.
Yeah, the brain is an organ. It screams all kinds of stuff.
We never look at it like that, but I love that.
It's an
Yeah.
organ. It's an
Yeah.
organ. It's a function. It's like your heart. Your mind is your thoughts. Your brain is the organ.
So that's a very vast difference in what I thought we'd be talking about today. But I love that because then it's not dependent on being in a relationship. So I can hear people trying to tune into this podcast saying, I'm single. How am I going to heal through pleasure? You just took that to a whole different place that my mind didn't even go to. And I love that because there's an empowerment there. There's that, oh, I'm driving this car. I've got that control. I've
That's right.
got that ability. I've got those choices. Keep going. That's incredible.
When she returned to the office the following session,
Yeah.
after several days of implementing her own reward system, I was like, okay, tell me how this thing went for you. She's like, this is incredible.
Yeah.
I've talked to my partner about it. He's on board. We're all good. And sometimes we make it just me, sometimes we make it us. But
Mhm.
it is incredible because it gives me another really tangible reason to listen to my mind and to ignore the organ,
Yeah.
brain.
And then so I'm thinking also like orgasm's incredibly beneficial because then we've got that cocktail of chemicals that happens. And yeah, so she's moving out of pain. She's moving literally quite literally into pleasure.
Like them. Yeah.
Tell
Yeah.
me about the organ and the cocktail of chemicals that happens when we orgasm and why that is an awesome way to begin to navigate through life and out of discomfort.
When we do experience pleasure, and it's not just orgasm, but pleasure in general, we can have a mixture of endorphins being released from oxytocin.
Is there an amount of time that sensual touch needs to be happening before we notice benefits?
Oftentimes, what I would encourage people to do is a simple exercise of kissing for the length of one song. So that's about 3.5 minutes.
Okay.
And it's not just my idea. This is one of the basic ideas that people do because within the first 30 seconds of just long kissing, no other touch, just lips to lips, tongue to tongue, you can have oxytocin already starting to flow.
Mm, yeah.
And so it's a pleasant experience. It's pleasurable and it's starting to flow, starting to be released into your body. And it's so calming. It reduces your heart rate. It builds emotional connection with the one that you're with.
Yeah.
It reduces stress, flushes cortisol. It it
Oh
is
my
one of the
God.
things we
That's motivation right there. Flushes
yeah.
cortisol. I'm going to inform my spouse
So
that
I would
I
kiss
now
couples.
require more. I
Yeah.
now require more than just many hugs a day.
So we call it the long kiss. It's a simple
Yeah.
exercise. We'll set it up where usually it's around, where you have some uninterrupted time.
Hmm.
This is what we call a non-demand type of exercise where we're not taking it as any expectation of something else is going to happen. Something else may happen, but that's not the point of it.
Yeah.
But you set a song and you simply kiss for the length of that song. Now, the first, even within a sexual scene, a couple is usually going to kiss for about 3 or 4 seconds. Now, I'm asking them to kiss for 3.5 minutes.
Hmm.
So they're going to go through several stages. First, it's going to be very fun.
Hmm.
It's going to be humorous. It's going to be awkward. Then you're going to have a little bit of resistance. You're going to say to yourself, hey, this is ridiculous. This is not working. And then you're going to get on the other side of that resistance. And it's almost like being fully present and mindful. Now your body is adjusting to it. That that release is starting to happen, and you're just able to be present in the kiss.
Yeah.
It's a journey all to itself, and you're demonstrating that this is something that can be shared. So when I say the pleasure heals, I'm talking about any form of just sensual, sexual, intimate pleasure.
Yeah. Hmm. Didn't know, Nick, it was going to be this hot. Oh man, we are missing out on so much as a society right now,
We are.
especially as these past few years we've been kind of a touchless society. We've literally become touch phobic. And I don't just think about it in terms of couples, I think about it in terms of children, our seniors, our elders. Oh my God. They go through days and days without a pat on the shoulder, a stroke of the hand, anything. And I can't think like that has any benefits for us. That's got to be so harmful. So this is a neat, radical new way to think and heal. And I'm kind of enthralled. I've got all these ideas now. Yeah.
I was talking with one of our colleagues who's also a massage therapist, and I was kind of walking through some of these principles with her, and her eyes just lit up, and she said, the other day I was giving a massage to a client. She was an elderly woman, widowed, and during the first few moments of the massage, she began to cry.
Yeah.
And when it was, asked, "Is everything okay?" Uh, she communicated. The client communicated. This was the first time that she'd been touched
Hmm.
since her husband passed away several years ago.
Yeah. One thing that
Wow.
I make it a point to teach, especially my PTSD people, is self holds, self havening. And so when we're
Mhm.
doing that, I haven't talked about that yet on this episode, but it's powerful not just for grounding, but because we do need that touch. So even if we're just lightly rubbing the hands, I will guide clients through a sequel of we're lightly caressing, touching the face, and
Mhm.
ideally getting that skin to skin contact because we are social creatures. And this is an organ too, and it needs just as much. And so sometimes when a client's going through a PTSD flashback, they're having a shame spiral. A shame spiral is the most painful thing I have ever experienced in my life. And so I
Mhm.
never want anyone else to go through that. One thing that got me through, aside from spirituality, was learning to do a self hold when we literally grab this place under the armpit. We're
Yeah.
creating a tight boundary and you're essentially holding yourself in this position. So we're activating the meridians. We're creating a sacred container, but then you can hold it for a minute and you'll start to feel the body start to decompress. And so we don't have to live in that space of, oh, I require another human being who wants to have contact with me, but also we can give ourselves that. I mean, so to think that here she is, widowed for however long she's gone without touch. And it's like, can't we just give ourselves that approval, that acceptance, that permission slip to, oh, I love all that this is.
Mhm. Yes. Oh, that is
Yeah.
beautiful. Oh, I'm so glad you're sharing that with your people. That's just remarkable. Um, I mentioned before, the work of the 7 different needs that we all have. I mentioned like being heard and understood and being
Yeah.
accepted. Number 5 on the list is it's an emotional need and it's called touch.
Mm,
Touch.
mm,
Touch is not just something that we are going to go through and maybe hopefully enjoy. It's actually an emotional need.
yeah.
Yeah. Mm.
I'm glad that that lady on the massage table was allowed and able to then receive it because I've seen people have the opposite. They hit a pocket of guilt or shame, and then they get up and they run, and then they deprive themselves even more. And it's just like, oh, that's awful. That's
Yeah.
hard. So I'm glad she was able to surrender to it, and that that colleague was able to witness and hold space for all of that.
Mm. It's a beautiful thing.
Yeah. But this is what we do. This is, we show up, we help people, and that's the gift and the beautiful parts. It's amazing.
It's amazing. It's amazing. Yeah. Mm.
So, you mentioned discovering your erotic profile is something that you have available for people to begin to explore and to get to know you and your work better. What would they be learning within that?
Discover your erotic profile is a process that I take every client through, regardless of what we're going to be working on. And so, what I've done is I just made it available on my website. And it is I think it's a 6 uh, session, a course a person can go through. I think because there'll be a few moments of me just kind of teaching about the principle of today's lesson, and then they can complete the majority of the work in a journal. So what it does, it really unpacks for the person all the different things that is informing their eroticism. What arouses them? What are the types of activities that they're into? What barriers can they identify that may be getting in their way? What scripts are playing within our bodies and within our minds regarding sex and sexuality? This may be messages from, family life, friends, past experiences. It helps a person kind of walk down and become very much aware that this is how I think about sex.
Mhm.
And it is an eye-opening experience for almost every single person because it is multiple sections and they will walk through a journal and just kind of write it all down for themselves. And I encourage them, even in the last lesson of the course, to keep on journaling what they discover during our work together or the work with their person, because so many of my colleagues who are around the world still send people to that particular, erotic profile process. It's a free course. I don't ask for anything of it. Um, but it's just a beautiful thing for a person to work through. They can literally take this and do this with their partner, to do this with their spouse, and then they can kind of compare, and there's pieces of it where they can walk through and just say, okay, this is how I answered, well, this is how I answered. And then they can actually learn quite a bit about themselves and the one that they're sharing love with. It is a process that is quite beautiful, and it will probably take a person. I encourage people maybe to do it over 2 or 3 days because I want you to think about it, but you'll be writing some answers down. So the different courses, I first let a person kind of walk through their sexual scripts. I ask them just general questions about it, and they'll just journal around those prompts. Then I ask a person a series of questions that help identify any barriers to sensuality, sex, intimacy that they can become aware of.
Yeah.
The, the third section is talking about just kind of what activities turn you on. And it's kind of like a yes, no, maybe type of list. Lots of people have been through those type of things. I have my own. That's what this is. Then we're going to explore sexual fantasies. Kind of what do you see yourself, your ideal sexual scenario? How does it play out? Because here's what I know to be true in the work that we're going to be doing. As I mentioned before, the person who's responsible for turning you on is you. The person who's responsible for your
Yep.
orgasm is yourself.
Mhm.
And oftentimes we'll make the mistake of believing the hype of either Hollywood porn, romance novels, that somehow the other person is just going to magically know what to do.
Yeah.
None of that stuff is true. Porn, Hollywood, romance, none of that stuff is true. Hallmark is not true. It's going to be something that you bring to the table and you are a part of. That's true for your arousal, and that's true for your orgasmic experience as well. But anyway, this erotic profile process gives them the kind of opening tools to be able to say, okay, this is who I am. And it's a beautiful thing.
Okay, Nick, sign me up. Where do I go?
You can find a link tree here at on Instagram. My handle is right there at Dr. Nic Natale. You
Okay.
can go to nicnatale.com. You're going to see it on there. I don't have an expensive store or anything like that, but it says store, and you're going to find a course right underneath there. And really what that does is give you a chance to kind of go through that process. I don't see the results. There's no results that you're submitting. This is your private work that is done. And you can take it to your coach, your counselor, your therapist that you're working with. And it's going to be a load of data for you to be able to work with.
And so if somebody wants to do this work, say they go through the class, they learn a lot and they're like, man, this Dr. Nick guy, that's my guy. That's who I want to work with. Do you primarily work with people in person? Do you also do virtual? What's that like?
We do virtual and in person. Our principal office is in Columbia, South Carolina. And I see people from across the state. They'll come in maybe for a couple of hours or something like that. Our state isn't all that big. And so people will drive an hour and a half. Then we'll come and we'll sit and we'll kind of work through. But I work with people from around the world just online. It's like everyone, has had the opportunity to do now. So I have clients from across the country and other countries as well. And we're working through these processes. Now, to do counseling or therapy, you have to be a resident of South Carolina for me to do that. But the
Mhm.
consulting still holds a lot of that stuff. But obviously, my license is bound to that state, so I'm not doing any
Okay.
type of therapy work or diagnosing or anything of that nature when it comes to that. But the work can be done. So, yeah.
Okay. So lots of availability, lots of ways to get in and work with Dr. Nick and have that experience of self awareness. What a gift. I can't tell you how many clients and people who come to my service and they're lost. They don't know who they are, they don't know what they're feeling. Here's another way to work through it, ladies and gents, healing through pleasure. Wow.
Pleasure heals.
Yeah. How
Amanda,
did you how did you find your way to this? Like, I still don't know.
well, this is a remarkable, and perhaps we need to set up another conversation to kind of walk up and talk about that path.
Yeah.
Because again, there was echoes in my heart from a young person
Mm,
about something broader and deeper out
yeah.
there than just what religion structured can contain. And a lot of the,
That's super relatable for me, specifically having a French Canadian family who went to church every Sunday, and then me having mediumship abilities and angel intuition. I
Mhm.
was playing with angels in the hallway, and then there was this huge disconnect when you'd go to sit down in the pews, and then all I felt was guilt and shame thrown at me. And I'm like, this is not right. There has to be something else. I feel like that's the same thing you talk about when you were talking about hearing those echoes. I had the same echoes, but they were different. They were more towards mediumship and spirituality and those things that weren't encompassed within religion. Yours was the sensual, it was the whole person.
It really was. And when I got married for the first time, I was literally checking a box in order to be ordained.
Mm. Oof. That's an awareness that's a hard one to yeah, mine was to escape my parents. To be
We all,
honest, I
we
got
all,
married to move out.
yeah, right. And so I wrote about it in my book, Secrets of Men.
Yeah. Do you have
And
that around? I don't have, the copy that you signed for me right up here in my office, but let's have people have a look. And this was Nick's first talk that I
yeah,
caught,
yeah,
and
Secrets
this
of
is how he caught
Men.
my
Yeah.
attention. Yeah.
I wrote about it briefly and just saying, hey, this is part of my journey. And I just had to be honest with myself about it.
Yeah.
But my sensuality, was something that was routinely repressed. And I confessed to lots of people that even in my role, I even attempted to repress others.
Mhm.
And I have to confess, I'm one of those individuals who evoked shame and guilt in others, for which I have been in a repentant mode for that for now years.
Mhm.
Now, I still consider myself a believer in Christ, but I know that there's so much more out there. And
Mhm.
what this is really about is love. That's what
Yeah.
all this is about. This is
Mm.
about love. And I have
Yeah.
worked in Hindus communities, Muslim communities. I have worked in pagan communities, which I have a wonderful story you would love about that. I had
You can't tease like that, that's just rude.
Do you mind if I share it? I mean, it's a
Please
beautiful story.
do, please do.
So several years ago, I'm in my counseling practice, and I get an email for someone who is, looking for a counselor,
Yeah.
and she was reaching out to me because she heard of my work, and she wanted to meet with me, but she had to say there's certain conditions for us to be able to meet. Now, I read through her list, and there were
Mm.
simple things like I need to meet in the morning, and while we're meeting, I need my feet to be able to touch grass.
Okay.
Um, so I was like, okay. And
Oh,
then she sent me a
interesting. Yeah.
little bit of articles to read.
Okay.
And when in my principal office, it's right beside the governor gardens for the state of South Carolina, the governor's mansion, the governor's complex. And so there's a public right across the street from me. There's a public garden there. And oftentimes when I'm with the client, I will be walking around that garden anyway. And so I was like, okay, we can do that. We can do that. As I was reading her article, she was informing me about rituals around the moon cycle she was about to do some intentions on. And she was preparing, and she needed certain sessions to come to decisions before she can give her intention at that moon ritual, that new moon ritual. And we talked over the phone, kind of got some more parameters from her. And I said, I'll be happy to accept it. We worked through her things, and she came to a decision that she was going to present. It took about 3 sessions, but she met her qualifications. So I asked her, you know, you know that I'm theologically trained in the conservative Christian church. Um, how did you, or why did you reach out to me? I'm sure there's other persons you can reach out to. She said, Nick, you're well known in the pagan community as someone who is deeply authentic and spiritual. And I needed a spiritual guide here to walk me through this. And there was no one. And that just swelled me. I just felt so good about it.
Yeah.
When I shared that story with other persons that are still part of the conservative churches that I loved, they were like, "What? Did you witness to her? No. Did you, correct her? No. What did you do? I sat with her and helped her have a conversation with herself.
Yeah.
That's all that I always do." And it was, astonishment to them, but a sense of pride to me.
Yeah.
Because this is really about love more than anything else. And I knew the topic she was wrestling with, and it was deep with her, and she was serious about this. She wanted to be authentic with who she was, and she was able to be all that in front of me.
Yeah.
That's hospitality. That's hospitality.
Yeah.
I create a space for a person to be themselves. And we're going to talk about the deepest things,
Mm.
because every one of us, Amanda, has a
Yeah.
public life that everyone sees,
Oh, yeah.
private life that
Yeah.
few people see, and a secret life they're probably looking for safe people to share it with.
I was just thinking about the level of courage it takes because here she's wanting to integrate herself and become whole. And so she's got to bring in all these different parts, her spirituality, beliefs, her practices, her rituals, but then also the therapeutic aspects that she
Mhm,
knows she wants for her psyche, her heart, her
mhm.
spirit. That had to take courage to bring all of that. And then the way that you received her as a whole person is just beautiful. And that's what it is. That is what is meant to be. We're meant to hold that space and to give that love, but to also create the space for them to find that love within themselves, for themselves. Yeah.
I gave a talk several years ago to other therapists, and I'm talking about healers who are on the edge. There's
Mm,
a wonderful book out there about healers on the edge.
okay.
And the healers on the edge are the ones who are working outside of convention, and they're working outside themselves. And Amanda, you are a healer who's on the edge.
Oh, I'm gonna have to look for that. Thank
And
you.
it is a beautiful, wonderful thing. And I am following you. I'm looking forward to seeing you again. Got to give a big hug there for a few
Of
moments.
course.
And I cannot wait to see how things are going to evolve in your life, in your work, and with the people who are trusting you.
Thank you so much. And I undoubtedly see the same in you. And I think that's why every time we're together, we click, we enjoy each other's laughter, each other's insights, the genius that we each do within our different spaces of work and helping people. And overall, just the neat little commonalities we have, like a love of dogs.
Absolutely love it all. He's
He's
like,
been a good boy.
the entire time.
Yeah, mine aren't in here for a reason. They are chaos.
Amanda, thank you for the opportunity to speak, and it's just good to see you.
Thank you so much. Let's not wait this long. Again, come back, take us on more journeys. I was swept away, and it gives my heart so much warmth to know that you are out there doing it the Nic Natale way.
Thank you so very much. Your blessing. Enjoy the day, okay?
You too, and goodbye for now, Soulful Seekers. I hope you enjoyed this episode. If you've got questions for Dr. Nic, please do find him. It's Dr. Nic Natale on Instagram or your website, Nic.
Nic.
NicNatale.com. Find him, reach out. Otherwise, you can post questions on the episode, and I will do my best to forward them to Dr. Nic if you're not ready to reach out. But I would check out that Discovering Your Erotic Profile class because it sounds amazing. You may just hear about me going in there myself. All right, all bright blessings. I'm wishing you wonderful things, and as always, stay inspired. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on this transformative episode of Trauma and Transcendence. Your stories matter. I would love to hear them and from you. Connect on our website, healingbeyondtrauma.com, or drop me an email at amanda@healingbeyondtrauma.com. Remember, healing is a journey we take together. Until next time, stay connected, stay inspired. This is Amanda, wishing you bright blessings.